Well, happy Markcast Friday here, live episode today, Black Friday. Thought I had eliminated going before, the New York Jets game and trying to all the competition today, get people getting up, get their shopping done. Forgot we're actually going up against the Feast of Football here, the XFL thing. So we'll see. Hopefully we can do whatever. But this was fun today. I felt like we needed to do something. I had been talking with Max about this, listener Max, producer Max here. Been knee deep in CFL content for about a month, and Mac, I'm trying to get away from like, okay, is it 8-4? Okay, now it's 5-5. Okay, now it's 8. Like trying to get through all that, making videos every week, but now we need to stop down. Max, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It feels kind of weird following spring football right now because it just kind of feels like a whole lot of nothing, really. But at least now, for the first time in months, really, we have something more substantial than hearsay. That's nice.
Yeah, it's been tough, and I know, and God bless Brandon and everyone trying to kind of do these videos. Like I said, we doing the Grey Cup show had a great success with that. Appreciate 66,000 people checking that out, which was pretty cool. The biggest thing that we've seen. Obviously on our channel, so excited for that. But Max said there's enough now with the government. I got the photos, all this kind of stuff. Mike Mitchell's recent reporting. There's enough to talk about. We need to stop down. I asked the Professor Andrew Murray, who is busy with family obligations, asked Greg Parks, and I said, Max, if it's important enough, we'll get Max on. We'll run down all this questions, everything else today. Philip checking in. Max, first off, what is the welfare check right now? Because I know there's been a lot of animosity online and a lot of now we've parlayed the XFL-USFL stuff and okay, well, who's going to win with the numbers and kind of all that stuff. We're sitting here. It's Black Friday, November 24th. How are you feeling?
I'm just looking around like, remember last year when the USFL was all putting their commercials on TV and during NFL games? I mean, I haven't been watching a whole lot of NFL football, but I don't think that's been happening lately. I sure haven't seen many people posting about it, if it has been happening, or anyone really. And the XFL is like, we'll just re-air stuff we already did on YouTube all off season, even now, just more of the same stuff. It really feels like they're just biding their time, hoping the merger gets approved in time to launch a merge 2024 season. And I'm a little concerned what's going to happen if they can't do it then. Are they going to have separate seasons for 2024, or are they just going to cancel it all entirely and start over in 2025 as a merged league?
Well, that's kind of my fear is, we went through this last year. We had the Vegas Vipers and the Cashman Field, Field of Dreams with all. And we have a question here from Brandon. We'll talk about the Vegas Vipers. If you have any questions, anything, post them and I'll tag them here and we'll get to them in a second. We went through all that last year. Really delayed. It doesn't feel like either of these leagues have a lot of juice right now. I do think the USFL is doing more. Hey, watch our guys play on Thursday night. Watch our guys play on Sunday. Kind of watch that stuff. XFL, like you said, we're doing this feast of Friday, but it doesn't feel like, this is a league with players reporting in a month and a half.
No, it certainly does not feel like this is going to be playing football in February. And honestly, I'm not even sure if the USFL is going to be playing football in April at this point separately either. It just kind of all feels like a bit of a mirage.
In terms of the back and forth where, felt like at the beginning, the reports were XFL reaching out to USFL, kind of being absorbed that way. Now, at least reports I had heard and flying in even this latest Thursday night to Canada, I'm there at the reporter suite getting, messages like, hey, now we're hearing it's going to be more XFL-y. Like, what did we stumble? Where is because it feels like every week kind of the needle kind of bounces one way or another.
The main stumbling has just been that they can't get it done, really. They can't get this sorted out, even though it's taken months upon months. And also that it took them this long to start on this process in the first place. They should have figured out that they wanted to do this if this was something entering their mind in like March of this year instead of July. Man, instead, we waited so long, and now the regulators are going to delay it through. We're hoping for the mid-December, but I don't know if this makes it through by the end of the year. I mean, I just don't see it, honestly.
Well, and there's always the kind of the end of the year shutdown stuff too, where everyone kind of ends up taking off. I remember following with all of the when we were going through COVID and all of the small business loans and unemployment and all of that stuff. And I remember tracking a lot of like government processes of, okay, when is this stuff going to get approved? And like, okay, now we're taking the next 4 weeks off. We'll be back. You're like, wait a minute here. What's going on? So yeah, we had John Lewis here who was on a couple weeks ago. I think the last kind of proper episode talking about the big government meetup. That's kind of what we have the most juice here to kind of get into today. And then we have some questions. Mike reporting that. Let me get the photo up. And then what do you make of kind of the reports coming out of, Danny the Rock? We're meeting in DC. Who do we have here in this photo, Max? Kind of because Mike did the big breakdown. I mean, Mark had the article, but Mike kind of put in this workout.
Yeah, I was snooping around trying to figure out who the guy in the middle was. And I did an AI photo recognition search, came back like 87% score, Burt Magnus. So I was like, oh, well, I'll ask and see if people who are actually reporting on this can find out if it's him. And sure enough, they did find out it was him in the middle there. So everyone else here, you see we have Dwayne and Danny on the ends. Then we have Jerry and Russ, Brandon next to each of them. And then we got Shanks and Mark Daly, who is like one of the heads of Redbird. He's like one of the partners, I think. And they were in DC.
And it seems to be the biggest sticking point right now is, at least from what I can understand, the XFL wanting 8 teams total, whether that's 4 and 4. I've heard 5 and 3, which would, is, again, there's kind of this like stick measuring contest here going on, which I don't like, right? I don't like celebrating victories of any kind of like, well, more USFL teams survives, whatever. But it seems to be that the government concerned with the losing of jobs, layoffs, kind of all of that stuff. They want more 10, 12 teams. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah. Personally, in my opinion, I think all the hearsay to this point about like which league has more teams is really all about how many home sites. So they want to have enough, and everything else has nothing to do with which league is preferred. And honestly, the people who are saying, oh, we think it's going to be more teams from this league or the other league are probably just, a lot of them, I bet, are coaches and players who are just talking trash, honestly. But I'm definitely concerned about the layoffs too as well, and I think they need to come up with some sort of compromise, and I've got a couple ideas listed out.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the thing, right? And it's never been. People always think like, okay, this merger is going to come together. We're going to have this 16, and Mike Mitchell, I know we talk a lot in the group chat, and this mega power league and 8 and 8 and all of that stuff. Clearly, this merger is a coming together of we can't compete against this. We need to consolidate a little bit. What are some ideas? I know you have your Google Doc here going through. What are some of the things that you're concerned about and that you want to talk through?
Well, the regulators are obviously worried about layoffs, but the league is like, hey, we're not going to be able to run this if we have 12 to 14 teams because we have too many players, too much overhead, whatever. And also on top of that, they're trying to move to the USFL model of cutting off all the full-time pay for all these assistants that aren't coordinators, which is only 3 of them. So on the bigger problem on the layoffs end for the large organization, if you can find a way to say, hey, let's meet in the middle on the number of teams, but then all of the teams, or all of them but 1 or 2 maybe, have home sites. And so that way you can say, hey, we've retained all this staff for selling tickets. We might move them around to markets, or at least we've retained the numbers of staff. We might have to fire and rehire or whatever. But that way you'll be selling tickets in markets. You'll have ticketing staff, stadium staff, vendors, all that. You're still paying those people. That part of the economy is still set. And on top of that, you're not taking away 8 teams. You're taking away 6 teams. So still a little bit of a compromise there for the players' sake and the coaches' sake and executives of teams, I guess, which there aren't really that many. I don't even think the USFL has much scouting infrastructure at all for teams. And then in terms of how to make each coaching staff more efficient, in terms of, because they don't want everybody full time. If they could find a setup like how the Renegades and some of how the Guardians did it, where they gave multiple different people like co-offensive and defensive coordinator roles, and then also an assistant head coach role and a special teams head coach role. All of those guys also coach their own position group, and then you have like 6 position groups covered, 6 assistants that are full-time between your co-offensive and defensive coordinators, special teams coach, assistant head coach. and then you have a core that you can maintain a culture every year in your assistance group, and then you can rotate some of the other guys in and out, like a running back coach or whatever, and that way it'll be easier to build a team every year.
But does this seem like these conversations of this magnitude in terms of kind of this feels very late to be having here in November? Do you anticipate that they thought they would have an easier time getting this pushed through? I know when we remember when the original reports came out and it said that 30, like they're not going to have any problems with this. Like this is such small potatoes, but it does seem like they're getting really caught in the weeds here.
Yeah, it kind of feels like they just assumed because the alternative was that they would go bankrupt, that the government would just give them the thumbs up. But they have to realize that the government has to look out for the long-term effects of something like this sticking around while still taking away layoffs, instead of as a warning, as to say, hey, this just doesn't work if you try to mess with this, and we're not going to allow you to just take away jobs and keep going. They have to, I guess they need to maintain their enforcement muscle, really.
It seems to me, and we've talked about this a lot with the the XFL, the 60 million and kind of all of that stuff, and the USFL. Like at some point, we're going to need to be okay taking a sustained loss for a couple of years here on this. And the problem to me is we're trying to figure out, well, how can we penny pinch and okay, let's go consolidate offensive, and we don't need this many. And it's like the CFL model, like okay, Chris Jones can be the GM and the head coach, and he's calling the defensive plays, and we're doing this. Like it feels to me at some point you're going to need to jump in, and I don't know. We've lived through this with the USFL with the hub model now with the XFL. It just doesn't feel like either of these entities is willing. And I get it. I mean, I don't, have hundreds of millions of dollars to lose either. But it seems like this isn't it seems like we're just treading water here. We're trying to shed excess weight versus trying to get a life jacket on here.
Yeah, and also it really feels like they're not even committing to trying to get people in the door. It just kind of feels like, let's just put football out there and we'll see what happens. And I mean, I wrote up the whole fans bill of rights thing, and they did not care at all about that, even though that was one of your most popular videos. And people just, like, the people in the leagues just don't care about actually trying to get fans. They just care about if they can get some minimal profits off the back end by reducing costs to the smallest possible amount.
Are you concerned? And I was here when we had John Lewis's episode on, and when we had Greg Parks on it, I guess it was like a month ago now, that the public perception of all of this, not only kind of in the casual market, right? Okay, we're hearing about all this stuff, but if I'm a fan of either of these leagues, here we have Chris, your Aviation Junction, talking, taking away the Dragons. Like, I'll tell you, my friends here in Seattle, like we're at, they're just waiting to get their money refunded at this point. They have no, I said, doesn't feel like Seattle is going to be involved in this, but they said it doesn't matter. Like we're out, it's been too many herky jerky, and we've been part of this since 2018. I mean, that's what I think some of these power ups don't get is, I understand the people working for the league and the team reps and horrendous, and this is jobs lost, and I don't want to see all this, but like some of these fans, this is 6-7 years going on to this. It's just a huge ask of now of like, well, let's sit tight here, waiting through all this, and was it the Renegades selling suites and the Battlehawks selling suites? Like, okay, but what's this going to look like here? Is it going to be a February kickoff? Is it going to be March, April? It seems like there's still too much in the air, even as far as that goes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the West Coast teams are out the door. I just think there's no way, right? But an April kickoff, February kickoff, March kickoff, whatever month kickoff. I mean, God forbid a July kickoff, right? Like, there's no way. I just don't think anybody. I think everyone who isn't the most diehard, desperate to have spring football survive fan just cannot possibly remain attached to this right now, because there's just no security in this team. If you get invested in your team, it's going to go away in 6 months. The league might go away in a year. And there's no reason to believe it won't, because the people who are running it are making it seem like it might go away this year. So like, it's really hard to see the point if you don't believe in the vision. And even if you do believe in the vision, can you trust these people? I don't know if you can anymore. I'm just gonna be honest.
Well, and the sentiments came in. I mean, that again, I've said this before. A lot of these people that have been involved in all of this, it feels like I don't know. It feels like this is a baby that's been passed on. It's been passed on. It's been passed on. And it's gone through so many hands and so many families in foster care, and it was in the court system, and it was got adopted by the government, and then they got adopted out to so like it feels like it's gone through so many different iterations to this point. It's really hard for me to hold on to. We have here from Pip talking, if they plan to run separate in 2024, it would be a disaster attendance wise. It basically a lame duck season. That's kind of, I feel like we're at a weird sticking point right now where all of this came out. I know we had the Axios reporting all of that back, but in terms of, it feels like it's a lose-lose situation right now where either we roll forward, hey, don't, pay no attention to the press release in September. We're working on this later, but then how possibly do you get invested in that? Or like you said, that we delay? Do we do whatever? But what do you make of that? If we just continue, this doesn't happen, we go forward in 2024, business as usual.
I mean, it's like danged if you do, danged if you don't, right? Like if you run the season in 2024, everyone knows this is completely meaningless. And if you do not run the season and you just go to 2025, then people are going to forget you even exist. Like all the TV audiences are going to be like, "Oh, spring football is gone. They went bankrupt again. I'm not even gonna." They're not. It's not even going to be on the radar that a merged league in 2025 is coming because these people do such a bad job of raising awareness about their football leagues that I just don't see how people would realize that it's coming back.
Well, and I thought it was interesting too, because we've talked a lot on here about coaching and staff and competition, right? With the CFL, and we're trying to get all this talent, whatever. It was funny to me. We were up in Hamilton for the Grey Cup, and Dave Naylor was on our stream. But we had it was that morning that he had just tweeted out because someone was asking about coaching competition, and they're like, he goes, "Well, there's so much uncertainty right now with the spring leagues in America." I'm like, perception changes really quick. And here just 6-9 months ago, I'm talking with CFL agents and we're telling people go play in the USFL, go play in the XFL, and then here you go. Like we know the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are going to be here in 2028. We know, we think we know the Edmonton Elks are going to be, they might be under private ownership, but there's just a lot of, like I said, again, shifting waters here from what was just even 6 months ago in terms of how these leagues are viewed.
I just think, if it just kind of feels like they don't care, really. They're going to do whatever. The ownership is going to do whatever they want. And if the league fails, whatever. It's a rounding error to them, whatever. They don't want to put in the real commitment to make this work. Because if they did, they would put in even the same level of commitment that they put into some of their other properties. Like, they put all this care and effort into making sure they can get people out to a soccer game. But then when you buy an entire football league and you just do not reach out to the fans until like 2 months before the season, and then the second time around, you don't really reach out to them at all because you don't even know if you're going to have a season. I mean, how are people supposed to take you seriously? I just don't understand.
I want to talk here. We have some notes. We'll have some questions we get to as well. Yeah, and I get that. That's why we're not telling anyone. I totally get that, right? Better off, be silent, business as usual. But it's hard. I mean, I tweeted out right after everything came out, and USFL was talking about their fire free agency. I'm like, man, this is really hard to kind of separate these two things. I'm like, okay, we know this is going on in the background, but it's like your parents are squabbling. It's like, well, dad's still got to take me to practice, but I know that when I get home, it's going to be awkward. Like, there's just a lot of whatever with that. But we've seen the trademarks. We've seen the NFL or the National League Football League trademark. We've seen the UFL trademark. Now hearing that it could be the XFL or the USFL brand name, which has always made more sense to me just because of the time and money put into that. In terms of it being the XFL, I think the USFL, I would ride with that. I would ride it with the USFL absorbing the XFL and moving on. Where do you make it currently? How you feel on that?
All I'm going to say is that the XFL is a larger online footprint and has a younger audience and also managed to draw slightly more with way less exposure. And also, quite frankly, I don't think the USFL brand really connects to anyone who's under the age of 50. And I just don't really get why you would have all these massive 600, 700,000 follower accounts and then pick the one that has like 135,000 followers.
I don't know. To me, and I have this hanging. I always have this from our good friend Arash Madani. Got that at Grey Cup and the Grey Cup 108. Twice failed. Now you're going in as a thrice fail. I think there's baggage on that as well. That's why I kind of go back and forth. I think I don't care which one it is. I think we need to maintain one and move forward. I think that,
and in the USFL, I mean, the XFL might be a thrice failed league, and the USFL might be a twice failed league at this point. Both leagues are failing pretty hard right now. I mean, there's no way about it. So I think you have to pick the one that has a larger connection to most of society, and I don't think that's the one that died 40 years ago and they're trying to revive, and that people under the age of 50 just don't care about. But that's just me. But whatever, they'll pick one, because the alternative is to bring a whole new name about that doesn't make any sense and try to make that connect with people whenever you've already put so much effort into building these other brands that just does not make any sense to do any other.
Yeah, let me know in the comments we had here. Foosball USFL starts. I mean, like I said, I'm the one saying I would just keep it the USFL. Fox to put a ton of money into that. I think it's clean. I understand what Max is saying. The residents of all of that, but I don't want to be too Homer Reed and be like, it's got to be the USFL or bust. Like, I don't know. I guess it depends kind of how the actual league management is going to end up being. But I'm looking here at the comments. Pat here saying I would stay with USFL with the ownership of the XFL franchise. XFL wants to cease, it appears. That's kind of where I'm at. Bringing the Battlehawks, bring it, like I said, marketed as an acquisition. The USFL bringing in, you call it the merger, whatever. But to me, branding and acquiring all these new trademarks is going to be a lot interesting in that regard. To me, it always baffled me that they would go down that course of like, well, we sued Steve Earhart and all of this, and we got all these trademarks, and Brian Woods bought all this in, and now we're going to dump it.
I think it probably cost the XFL more to buy the league than it did for them to go through all those lawsuits and those trademarks. So you tell me, honestly, and whatever. They'll pick one. It doesn't really matter. We can decide which one you want, but at the end of the day, it's not up to us. I will say this. There's only one USFL representative in that picture in DC. Everyone else is basically associated with the XFL or ESPN, which is directly tied to the XFL. John, don't feel like you're too old. I said 50 plus. Don't. I'm not pushing too hard on it. You're not that old.
Denzel wants to know, how do we get out of some of these stadium leases? Well, you got Lumen Field and all of that. I don't know. I think are these 1 year offs at this point? Can we duck it to that point?
I'm sure some of them are 2 or 3 year leases. They'll pay whatever it takes to get out and move on. I mean, the alternative is to lose even more money staying there. So,
well, you're going to end up having to give refunds anyway for a lot of this stuff. I mean, in terms of like Seattle, like we're all paid up. I mean, it's not a lot, but I mean, it's what, 385 times 4. I mean, we're in for, 14, whatever that is, $1,400 or whatever. So, they're going to have to do that at that point. You had the note on here with losing an NBC presence, not having an NBC presence here. What do you, in terms of kind of the merge league move?
It's just hard to say. All I know is there's nobody from NBC in that picture. And partially that's probably because Fox only sub-licenses games to NBC. It's not like NBC is directly involved in the league in any way. But the ESPN is technically not directly involved in the ownership of the XFL either. And they're right there in the middle of the photo with Burke, Magnus. I'm a little concerned that NBC is not going to stick around for this new iteration because they can see that the interest in the overall field is kind of dying out, and they can see that these leagues are not being well run at all.
Elaborate on that. Not being well run.
Well, they can see in their audience numbers, right? I mean, they were expecting huge numbers in 2023 for the USFL, and it just was not there. So, it's just kind of hard to say what sort of other stuff would you really hope for, right? It's kind of, why would you stick around?
In terms of I guess the time to strike on this, have we missed this window in terms of the competing last year? And I just checked, we're currently out drawing the Feast of Football on the XFL channel. So that's exciting, just as a personal victory. Not that it's a low bar, but I'll take that as a win here Black Friday. We beat the Sharks 7-1, the Kraken the other night in the States. These little victories in life. But, because like I said, now there's so much uncertainty with this. We're dragging this out. We're going through the same things last year. I mean, it has this window already passed, if that makes sense.
Well, for 2024,
I just mean in general right now. I mean, for the short term, like, I'm talking within the next 10 years here. I mean, we had, was it John Lewis on? I don't see this happening. Or was it Paul Reese? One of the, like, this is kind of the last chance of this for the next decade plus.
Maybe. It just kind of, I feel like if someone else who was smarter came in and started over and tried to build up from the ground up and didn't try to feel as big and instead started at the roots, they would be able to do a lot better. But they don't. They all want to go big, but then not commit to going big. And it just kind of feels like a get rich quick scheme. And it's like, no, those never work. This is not cryptocurrency, y'all. And that didn't work either in the long run.
Well, that's always been, and I've been pretty public about, vocal about my USFL of, this is more football, please watch. And I called it, back when it was the Brian Woods and it was more caveman football versus the XFL, which was like, this is a matrix and we're going to be cross connecting and all these platforms and, scaling up and the multi-layer and all this stuff. I don't know. Did you feel that? Were you that much more inspired from the XFL's product last year? To me, it felt, there was lip service, and I know the broadcast had a different flair to it, but fundamentally, how did you feel now looking back at those?
The main thing I appreciated about the XFL more than the USFL would be they did a bit better of a job earlier in connecting compared to when the USFL started. And also, they didn't let themselves get weighed down by having literally 0 fans at games. Which was something that I think that perception hurt the USFL so much that even though they brought themselves out to more markets, it was too late. The first impression had already been made, and people just didn't want to watch the USFL anymore because they thought no one's going to be there. There's no energy. If you're a casual fan who doesn't even really care that much about the football game, you just want to be entertained. The crowd is part of the entertainment, whether people who are actual football fans like Emery Hunt want to say that people don't care about the crowd. People absolutely do care about the crowd. That's why they watch college football. People don't watch college football for the football unless it's the very best teams. Like people will watch, I don't know, Arkansas, Florida because of the environment, because it's exciting, right? It's pageantry. Whereas that USFL brand's been so tarnished by these empty stadiums. That's another reason I don't think you want to keep that USFL name, because people are going to be able to watch it, see the name, and be like, oh, that's the game with literally 0 fans in the building. What's the point of me watching that? That's like watching like some people on YouTube. What's the point?
It's hard. It's hard to me, and I don't know. I kind of go back and forth with both of it. To me, and I know it's been badgered to death, this kind of hub thing, but I do agree with you, at least in terms of the long-term effects of it. I think it's something where if you need to argue it repeatedly, it's a thing. And so that to me is challenging. And we have John Lewis here. You had so many casual fans ever say they went back because of those empty stadium objects. It's like if you're in an argument with someone, like, oh yeah, it's fine. Like, don't worry. Like at some point, it's going to be, it's something that needs to be taken into account. The minimal more that the XFL had in some, and we had a question here about the Vegas Vipers stadium, but I do agree with you. I think long-term effects of that, it's hard. I think USFL fans champion hubs, champion, the no, saying the no fans is fine because of that business model made sense. To me, merely outlasting your competition does not make a successful business model. It means that you were able to survive longer, right? With the funds that you had, you're not proving growth on that.
Lasting longer is not going to make people want to watch. Lasting longer is just going to be a slow death. Do you want it fast or do you want it slow? I don't really want either. I want these people to actually understand how to connect with the fans. That's what I want.
Well, and I've had conversations and talking like, because people think like I'm all butthurt because Seattle's like, oh, Reed's like, I really don't care. I mean, it was cool, and when we went to the games and all of that, I go to like one BC Lions game a year. I cover the CFL fine, but to me, this promise of like, well, no, we're going to take a step back, and then in 2-3 years, like you're going to figure it. We'll get to that point. You haven't proven that yet, so to me, it's promising something down the road, but I don't have anything right now to prove that that's something that's going to actually pan out in the future.
And as they've ramped up their commitment to more markets and more fans, again, the broader national interest has already turned away. It's already declining, and that perception has not changed. It did not increase over the course of the season as people realized that there was more interest around the league in the places they played. It declined because people already gave up, and that's going to be a really hard mountain to climb. And I think that same problem is going to hit the XFL now, because if they cancel their season in 2024, they're toast. And if they don't cancel their season outside of maybe St. Louis, probably still, despite it all, and DC will probably still show up, but I mean, there might not be more than 5,000 fans in any other XFL market. Maybe you'll get 10,000 in San Antonio. And I mean, sure, people will see that at least somebody cares, right? But they're going to see that nobody else really does. And how long are people going to be willing to watch that whenever it just kind of feels like it doesn't matter unless you really care about the sport?
We had a question here from Pat. I think that I think at this point it might be better to let 2024 play out. I think it would be better to see them possibly dilute the teams from there. Usually the thinning of guys who are move on to the NFL, etc. I don't know. I've gone back and forth because I had said originally, and I'll hide this because we can't see your beautiful face. If this merger doesn't happen, at least in my perception, I see much more happening with the USFL right now. Am I reading that wrong? Because you've said that you've been unimpressed with that. Because to me, it feels like the USFL is right. Like we're doing Birmingham events, like we're ready to flip the switch and go if we need to.
I mean, I think they'll have a season. I'll put it that way. I think the USFL will have a season if this merger doesn't happen. Do I think people will really care? Nah, I don't think they're doing anything to actually make people care. So, sure, there will be a USFL 2024 season. Do I think the audience numbers are going down despite them trying to ramp up exposure even more on TV? Yes, I do. Do I think that their online following is going to really increase? No, I don't really think it's going to improve. So it'll just be a lost season from the USFL. Honestly, if it was up to me, I would hope the merger goes through. They cancel 2024, and then they put their foot down on 2024, and they actually commit to connecting to local markets like they should have done all along. And then at least people will know that they're coming in 2025. And on top of that, they'll feel like this time the league actually cares. Because currently, I don't think either fan base, if they were really honest with themselves, feels like these leagues really care.
I've thought about this, and I've talked with Dorothy, and not that anyone cares what I think, and certainly with the CFL and everything. I mean, I think they tolerate it, let me come up, but I do wish at some point anybody would have a conversation with anybody in terms of the fan bases with these leagues of like not coming in with that we know exactly what we need to do, and like many of the mistakes that have been made over the last 2-3 years, I think could have been course corrected by some conversations of like, well, we've seen this work before, we haven't seen this work before, this is what you need to do. It just baffles me that we're at this point now, and it feels like it's kind of the same. It's like you're the soldier kind of in battle. You're like, I've been through this. I've already kind of seen all of this stuff and could have saved a lot of these casualties along the way.
Yeah. If you literally like looked into the history of spring football at all, they would just obviously realize that it would the way they were doing it is just not going to work. And now you're at a point where if you have a season, people are not going to be able to connect that to whatever the new league is, even if you maintain the name, because you're going to be bringing leagues with totally different teams together, totally different markets. Some markets are going away, and also people don't really have any idea it's happening. And if you don't have the season, then the only way you're going to be able to get people to know you is if you actually get out there in the markets and you say, hey, we're coming. We have all this together. There's a reason we canceled it. It's because we're going to come back better and stronger and offer you something serious this time instead of just halfway committing. I would rather almost throw away the 2024 history connection and just pretend we're starting a brand new league with the same name just to maintain a brand, and push and push and push and say, this time we're for real. We mean this. We're serious. We care about you now. But, maybe they don't, but I think they might not care. So
Well, I wouldn't go. I think it puts it in a challenging situation. I put it up already, but Dynamite Gaming said no season 2024 would kill any interest, no trust that league can even play. I will say, and John here that said as well about that. I do not talk to nearly as many players as I know, like Mike does, and I know Evan has connections, and Pat, and kind of everybody else in our circle. But I had a couple of players reach out here over the last week, because I think just like probably CFL stuff and where our stuff's getting shared more and like, hey, hey, what do you think about all this stuff? And, they have no idea what's going on. Like they're totally left out in the dark. And to me, that's a challenging place as well. If you're a coach or a player and you're at this point, if you're, social media people for the XFL or the USFL, if you're selling tickets, like it just puts everybody in this hard situation. And to me, it's hard now to, whether it's this year or next year, okay, well, now we're serious about this. Like I know we kind of strung you out for a little bit, but now, the alcoholic father. Now I'm ready to come to your games, Billy. Like now I'm going to be here.
Yeah, and if they communicated with, like, I can't imagine how the union feels right now.
Well, I want to get to that. Yeah. So wait, I mean, because that's the other question about that, right? Is the UFLPA, right? Didn't they post, like Evan shared, they posted some like timeline of everything coming up that they need to figure out their stuff as well. I mean, how does that even interact with all of this?
I mean, there's no way to really know. I know what they probably, I mean, I'd imagine they hope they could get more communication, more clarity, and they need to know the timing because people got to know whether they're moving out to Arlington or Detroit or Memphis or whatever. But honestly, if they do end up playing the season, they do communicate with all these guys and they sort it out. And then, oh yeah, they play it. They get similar, maybe slightly worse numbers than last year, and then people have no idea the new league is coming. Now, maybe what they do, maybe the only way you could make a 2024 season work is if you use this, say, hey, literally the entire time you say, hey, 2025 new league coming, new combination of teams. Maybe then it's worth it because then it's just a 3-hour infomercial for next season. And maybe then it's worth it. But otherwise, I don't think the impact on the new league is going to be held much by having a 2024 season. I mean, we've had the CFL cancel seasons and still come back. And obviously it's different for them because they've had committed fan bases. But I think as long as you work to connect to the local markets, people will come out. Because once they see that commitment, what you get in, what you put in, you get out, right?
But I will say the CFL canceled COVID year this year now, 3 years later, I think was the first, both from a quality of play standpoint and from a fan buy-in attendance standpoint. We saw the Grey Cup ratings up. I think it took 3 years to bounce back from that. So I agree with you, but I wouldn't so quickly say, hey, let's just take time off or whatever. It took a long time to rebuild that, both in terms.
It's going to take a long time to build it either way.
Yeah.
For this, I mean, it might take a decade. Are they going to be that committed? Who knows?
We have a comment here, Shaden. As an XFL equipment manager, we've been left in the dark, and I think it's going to be hard to even fill staffs for the team if no 2024 season. Yeah, I mean, I can't, and my condolences as well to that. Like, I just can't imagine. We've seen XFL people, and I've seen LinkedIn profiles change and people getting different jobs. It's huge to, I'm blessed here in this world where, I work from home and I'm able to kind of do all of this stuff. I could not imagine if this was my sole revenue, if I was trying to work for one of these leagues, how to kind of navigate all of this. I think you're asking a lot of those people as well.
I can't imagine trying to navigate getting ready for a 2024 season if you only get 2 weeks notice because the merger doesn't get approved until late January. I mean, it's going to be a nightmare for you if you do have a season at this point as well. It's just which nightmare do you want to have?
Make sure you I have a couple questions you'll get to. Make sure you get your questions, comments in here. We'll go till the bottom of the hour. And then I know the Jets are coming on here and we can go watch is it Tim Boyle now? Are we really living through all this stuff? But
you can watch the Jets and the Dolphins. I'm going to watch Tulane, UTSA, Roll Wave. I need them to play SMU next week and SMU needs to beat them. So.
We had a question here talking about the Vegas Vipers thing. I saw this. I don't know. I have a hard time. We lived through this with some of the job hirings with LinkedIn as well. It's really hard to source Wikipedia and LinkedIn articles for things. I don't feel the Vipers are playing in the Vegas ballpark. I think they would have done that before. And I don't see the Vipers sticking around in any iteration along with the Dragons.
I don't even think they're playing in 2024. I think if they do, they'll put them in Arlington and just call it a day. I don't think they're gone. They're long gone.
It's hard. So, to go through the different current machinations, I had heard, okay, we're going to have the 8 teams and, do the Arlington and then play whatever here. But if we need to do more teams and we're like, then we need to hub up. I guess what's the recent, I don't want to get too deep down in the different number of variations, but if we expand from 8, it feels very difficult to replicate the XFL 2023 model of Arlington and then flying out, right? It feels like we're going to need to hub people if we go more than that.
Arlington's a pretty big city. I don't feel like you'd have any issue finding. I mean, you've seen my DMs before about all the quality football facilities in North Texas. If you're going to put a hub anywhere for 10, 12 football teams, you're going to pick North Texas because they will have the facilities for however many teams you need. They will have the hotels for how many teams you need. They'll have the size of airport needed to get you anywhere you need in the country. The real question is it going to be too difficult to plan and like do the logistics for all of that, having them all from that one place? I tend to feel like the answer is no. I feel like you could still do it with 10 teams. And maybe 8 of them are teams still based in real markets, and the other 2 are just the permanent road teams or whatever. But it definitely will get more complicated, and you will have the nightmare trying to figure out how are we moving the UFLPA union stuff from that one district of the country to the Texas district, whatever. There will be problems, obviously, but there will be problems no matter what. So I think you have to have that reduced cost of being in one hub and flying out, or doing. I mean, I guess you could do multiple hubs, but then you don't get some of the benefits you get from having the same consistent quality of facilities and care and travel.
What would you say is the biggest hurdle is right now? I mean, obviously government approval, but in terms of figuring out logistically here, getting the teams ready to go, getting the teams marketed, what would be if we wake up on Monday and it's like, okay, this is all approved and we're doing whatever, what's the next biggest hurdle step moving forward?
Are we assuming a season is happening with the merged league in 2024?
Yeah, I think you have to. I think you can't. I don't think either way. I don't think you can play separately or if you have to play together.
Yeah, so I think it's approved and the season's happening in 2024. First off, when in 2024, right? Second off, whose season tickets are you canceling? Whose are you keeping? You need to inform those season ticket holders that, hey, your season's going to be not whatever you thought it was. You might have more or less home games than you would expect, probably more, because they're probably going to have a couple teams with no real market. And those teams will in my opinion, it would be more sustainable just to have a couple extra teams that are always playing away, because everyone's flying anyway. So you might as well have a couple extra teams just to increase your game inventory, if nothing else. And then, so you're gonna have that problem of figuring out who's staying, who's going, who are we keeping in our customer base, who are we kicking out. You're gonna have the problem of vendor contracts. Who are you cutting off? Who are you keeping? You're going to have the problem of who are we keeping full-time on coaching staffs, who we're going to have to tell that, hey, we have to let you go if you don't want to be if you want to be full-time, because that's just not going to happen. You're going to have the issue of roster sizes. Heck, obviously, I mean, the football is, from the business perspective, is the least important thing, but at the same time, you do have to decide how are you going to play this football game in this merged league. I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to have to pick one rule set. And I will say, seeing Russ Brandon there makes me think it will probably be the XFL's rule set, but maybe not. Who knows?
Well, I hate this. Publicly, I hate the USFL kickoff. I mean,
I really, I'm biased towards the XFL rule set, but I think I have good reason to be biased towards the XFL rule set. Is all I'll say.
In terms of, keeping more teams and potentially doing that, right? Why don't we hub? Let's move the Breakers. Let's hub them with the Orlando team, right? Let's move the Vipers down. Like, can you keep more teams? We're needing to shed these costs. We're more concerned, if we're the XFL or USFL, we're more concerned with keeping costs down than we are in terms of keeping teams alive.
Yeah, I mean, all they care about is, can they find a way to be even less expensive than they already are and find a way to actually make money, because otherwise they wouldn't be merging right now, because it's not like one league is clearly outdoing the other in terms of any sort of financial advantage, outside of the ones that the USFL invents on paper by doing totally the money we're making by selling ads on this USFL game is just so much more than the amount of money that we'd be selling for Fox on any other content. Totally. Right.
Well, to me, it always felt like we're selling these ads, but we're not counting the cost of the league. That to me is always how I've read more of that as we're moving the books where that like the Markcast is profitable because all the equipment is owned and operated by Best Made Videos. Like the Markcast in and of itself is not a profitable. Like I think there's to me that feels a little bit.
But
more
also, it's the same for their income. The income would be coming in at least partially to Fox anyway. In fact, their primary source of income would be coming to Fox regardless, just maybe a bit less. So it's all sorts of shoddy bookkeeping that's making it allow them to say that they're making a profit. It's not reality. It's a fiction.
Well, it's the same way that it was a 4% increase in viewership from season
season
1 to season 2 of the USFL, where we took the average of the entire viewership of season 1 and based it on the season 2 kickoff, which was down. Yeah, and the XFL does it too. I mean, I see their digital numbers they post and kind of all this stuff. I mean,
but at least that is it's puffed. It's a hot air, right? But at least it's real, tangible hot air instead of complete fiction. It's the difference between making something out of nothing and then turning nothing into a lie. So it's just two different kinds of manipulation, really.
We represent the hardcore in here. We get all these people watching Black Friday, kind of all this different stuff. Casual audience, how are they going to react to this? How are they, there's a non-zero number of Seattle Sea Dragon fans that do not know any of this is going on at all, right? The Vegas Vipers fans, I mean, they're going to kind of know, like, how is the public going to respond to, 4, 6, 8 teams are going away here, like Thanos. That might be a good thumbnail for that episode that week. The Thanos, like, cut the universe in half.
If they kept 5 of the XFL markets and then 3 of the USFL markets plus 2 permanent road teams, however you want to arrange those permanent road teams, I think you would keep enough of the primary stadium audience to be fine. And I don't think the TV audience is all that connected to the stadium audience. I think the TV audience just wants to watch football on a Saturday that has some intrigue. And as long as you prove that you're still around and you market hard, you'll keep them. But what I'm worried about is I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to do a terrible job of promoting this new league, and people they're not even going to realize that football is coming on Saturday, and they're not going to watch it because they're going to have no idea it's there.
I saw a comment earlier. They were talking, I guess Fox is running USFL ads during NFL games or whatever. To me, we joke about the real football and all that stuff in the Super Bowl. That is 1% of the marketing that needs to be done on this. I mean, running the 10-second TV ad bumper. Like I said back in 2020, I was sponsoring booths at event shows we were doing, we do weddings and corporate events and kind of stuff. Like we had XFL staff members there running, they were any sort of thing that you could be at promoting with either a booth or a table. They were outside the games. They were doing that. Like it's so much more, I think, than just flipping the switch and running an ad. And that to me has never resonated. I know certain fan bases. I know the Brahmas did a good job, right? Locally, right? I know Orlando and Corey, they did a good job locally. Obviously Seattle, like there was certain teams that rose above it, but overall as a league, it felt like none of those lessons were taken from 2020, where Vince was a wrestling promoter and got that on the ground, what needed to be done. It never felt like they always viewed it more as a TV product.
Some of the markets did a really good job with the people who were hired, but all of them were hired late. So all the people on the ground who were there when they were there did what they could. I really don't doubt that. My beef is with the people running the leagues up top, way up top, who just don't have the vision to realize you can't just show up a couple months before, no matter what you do, and expect people to care. I mean, in the 2020 XFL, I mean, we had events in the summer before the season saying like, hey, this is coming. We have, they rolled out Bob Stoops and they're like, this is coming, football 2020, national television. This is serious. and Oliver Luck's in town. He's going on tours. He's on press radio tours. He's at Super Bowl
He's
Radio
at the
Row.
Super Bowl. Yep.
He's everywhere. The people are everywhere. They're there early. They're there often. They're responsive. They're making content. They're appearing on podcasts. They're appearing on podcasts. They're promoting what they're building from the ground up. That's not happening. And it's not because the people don't want to do those things who are at the floor. The people on the floor aren't being given those opportunities because the people up top are only caring about how can we make this as cheap as possible.
Well, even like they would do the Facebook announcements for like, okay, here's going to be the new head coach, or here's going to be whatever. Like, I remember watching and like I was very casual at that point. Like, I don't even know who this guy is, but it seems to be a big deal. You know, let me go Google now and figure out. And I mean, they did these for all the markets. Remember, they were doing those Facebook lives and everything. It's to me like, we did our CFL show, and I was like telling Dorothy about this because obviously it was exciting. It's a ton of work to go into even that, right? We do the thing, and we're posting, and we're telling everyone, and we're sharing, and we're doing the thing. Like I said, if we just would have showed up and flipped on the switch and went live the morning of the Grey Cup, like you don't get. And that's like you said, they've never gotten that. You can't just show up and put the game on and say, "Here you go," like a channel surf your life away.
The 2020 league had Winston Moss and Heather Brooks Carrots getting announced at the same time in the parking lot of the stadium with the like police cars driving by. But the media came out because they put in the commitment to say, "Hey, we're coming," and they were like, "Hey, this is interesting," and there's clear amount of commitment behind this. Whereas now it's like, we'll do a Zoom call, We'll do a press release, maybe the coach will show up like a couple months before the season, but like we'll only post about it like 3 days before the event's actually happening. Maybe we'll have a season ticket holder event, but we're only going to give you 12 hours of public notice for anyone who doesn't already have a season ticket to want to come and visit. It's just like, what's the point? Like, what's the point of hiding all of this? You're not helping anybody. It's like the rake meme where the guy steps on a rake and it hits him in the face. That's kind of what happened to the USFL. And then the XFL is the one where they're riding the rake and it flips in midair and then they step on it as they land and it hits them in the face. It's the same outcome, just different ways. It is just so disturbing that none of them get it yet, especially on the XFL side when you have an owner who has done all these things I'm talking about overseas and built something there with some of the soccer teams they own. And they just don't understand that a lot of those principles apply whenever you're not working with major league sports fans in the US, because they aren't just going to come. You have to build it.
I remember, and this feels like a fever dream ago, flying to Arlington with Danny and Russ and all of that, and they had the Arlington hub. And I remember, it was funny because everyone wanted to talk to Danny and The Rock, and then they left, and it was like me and one local person talking to Russ Brandon, and I'm like, this is sweet. Like, I'm super excited right now. And I know, like, Pat got to talk with Russ. I think it was at the showcase here a few months ago, but talking back then, and what are you going to do? We've seen the USL. Yeah, the quote, we're going to be the first one in, last one out. We're going to do all this stuff. And it never, and I don't know if that was lip service or if they thought that this was an honest effort going in, but I never saw that, the dream that was promised.
They think they can get away with marketing the XFL like marketing Black Adam. Oh, we'll just go on a tour a little bit before the show comes out, We'll have The Rock roll up. Everyone will go crazy for him. And then, he'll hold some babies. But, it just doesn't work like that. This isn't big ticket stuff. This is the grassroots. This is the people on the ground who are just love football, or people who just want to watch football on Saturday and chill. And you have to give them some motivation. You have to give them something to get attached to. They're not going to get attached to just a name or a brand. That's just not going to happen. It's all so regrettable. So before we move on to anything else, I just want to. Do you want to talk about the hilarity over people continually trying to predict everything that's going to happen and just continually not knowing anything at all and looking very silly?
Sure, happy to.
Okay, can we talk, like, what is going on where we're having people who are not involved in reporting on the XFL? Like, we'll talk about these people first. Not reporting on the XFL at all, or the USFL at all, or the
Are we
AFL.
talking like that Howard guy? Howard,
Yeah, but Howard, yes, but also there was like Dennis Dodd, who reports on college football, was involved. Like, there's so many people trying to get in on this, and I just don't understand, why would you want to get in on this when you have you seen how much disinterest there is in this right now? Why are you trying to get involved in our land? Get away.
To me, what it speaks to more, and I back when we spoke, had conversations with Mark about this, like when I'm a proponent of any of our media, and if whoever, Brandon wants to support stuff, if Stefan wants to, like, I'm a proponent of any of the people that have put in the time and effort to do this. And what kills me is when it's anyone that's got at ESPN in their handle, or this is some reporter that whatever, like, now, when they talked about us, like, now I'm like, Mike Mitchell's been reporting this for 6 months, or we've doing this for whatever. It was when all the teams were going to come out, and Mike had been talking in the cities, and oh my God, someone else. Like, it's okay to perpetuate all that stuff. So I don't like that just because it's more of that, and I just don't like that it's because of someone that's not previously in our circle talking about it. That somehow makes it more connected or locked in than anything else. That's my problem with that.
It's almost like they just want to cover like the whole "this league is going to go away" thing, so that they can be the guy that broke the story about the death of spring football again, and then they get clicks for that. Like the Sports Illustrated writer who wrote about the death of the AAF a couple of years ago, he got huge publicity for that. That's kind of what it feels like. And then on top of that, the people who are involved in the weeds in the XFL and the USFL, who are they getting these reports from that are like, hey? And even the people like Neil Stratton, I'm like, oh, he's getting the number of teams, and it's going to happen in like 2 weeks, and we might get an announcement. So I'm like, who are you? Are you getting that from your player personnel friends? Because there's no way that you actually talked to someone in ownership who told you the regulators are going to have it ready for us in 2 weeks. Like,
it was kind of like the Howard thing. It was kind of like he was hearing in retrospect. Like, we had heard, like, Neil had put out whatever, and then it had turned into something else and turned into something else. And then it was like a week later, Howard's like, hey, did you hear it was going to be Sunday? It's like, buddy, like, that was a month ago. Like, you gotta like, that to me was always funny of that, of like, they're here. And I will say even this, and this was funny. We'll round this out here pretty soon if we want. I know you got good, but we got good viewership right now. It's fun. It was so funny to me. We were after our live show, we were back at the BC Lions Den, and Naylor was there. We hadn't got to talk a lot with Naylor during the week because he was doing hits with Farhan and all the TSN stuff. And we're sitting there having a beer, and he's like, hey, do you want to know what I heard about the merger? And I'm like, yeah, tell me, like, I'm ready to hear what Dave. And it was the same kind of thing. Like, it was whatever they had come out through. And no disrespect. I mean, I know Dave's talking to right people and all, like, no disrespect, but I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, I heard like the XFL is reaching out to the USFL over. I was like, okay, like, it just was interesting. But there's all these people hearing it. It's like you're playing telephone and you're hearing it person 3 or 4.
They're all talking to the same player personnel, coach people, and the players and whatever. I'm just like, none of those people have any idea what's going on. And then on top of that, they're getting like all these numbers, all these dates, and I'm like, why are we doing this? Because there's no way you actually know that. It's just silly. Anyway, I have another hour before this game kicks off, so I have nowhere to be. So
we'll see what people want to do here. People want to hang out for a minute, and then we'll get going here. I love Gregory. Gregory's a longtime listener. Comment on this. Why you guys really say about the merger? The executives at Fox are not obligated to call you up and tell you what's going on. This will happen when it happens. Gregory, you are absolutely entitled to your opinion. The funny thing is, I never all I do is come on here and share my opinion and ask other people's opinions. I never tell, but I get a lot of well, you are wrong with this, or you, and this isn't just a shot just at Gregory. I get this that's fine. If you're that's awesome. If you're cool with it, if you're ready to go on, I just know I get a lot of DMs from, like I said, from players, from staff, from other fans. So you were not alone in this thinking or that thinking. That everyone has a varied opinions here, and everyone's able to kind of have different ways they feel about this. So I respect Gregory. If he's cool, go for it.
Okay. Here's my thing, right? This is not the NFL. This is not Major League Baseball. This is not the SEC. This is not the Big Ten. This is not even the CFL. There is no established fan base. Every single league at the start, the fans are going to be entitled to demand whatever they want to make the league work, because otherwise they just won't show up. Like, do you think if the NFL didn't appeal to the fans they had, that the people who were willing to show up early, that they would still be here right now? No. Those teams died out. That's why the NFL and the NBA and all these teams had teams going in and out within 5 to 10 years in the first 2 decades of their existence, because they didn't understand how to build up fans, or because of some other economic reason. Like, we should be entitled. We absolutely should be entitled as fans to demand that these leagues do better, because otherwise they won't last. And I don't care that I shouldn't take for granted that spring football is here. I should demand that these leagues do whatever it takes to last and be successful, because otherwise I know that what's going to happen to these players is they're just going to get hurt, and the fans are going to get hurt, and we're going to have to start all over again with some other ownership group who doesn't get it either, most likely. So yeah, we're all going to be demanding, and you know what? We should be.
I appreciate that, because I don't know. I agree with you that it's this. It's a different world. It's a different landscape, and it's never resonated with me that they. I think that they get it in the collective of like, okay, I don't think they get how niche a lot of this stuff is. And now I think, surprise alert, when they turned on like their social medias back a couple years ago, and like, oh my God, what are these DMs? What are these comments? Or what are these whatever? I mean, I think that there's a lot of, I don't know. To me, I never got it. Like, you do Black Adam, DC, like, that fan base. Like, this is a very similar mindset of that, in terms of like, you have a super group of hardcore fans wanting to make this work and going to be upset when certain things happen.
And this time around, the problem is that the hardcore fans are not enough to keep this around. Whereas you could probably keep DC around on their hardcore fans alone and at least have something. Whereas it's just not going to be enough to have hardcore fans, because it's too early. You need to get the casuals in the door. You need to get people to become hardcore, and you need to get the people who aren't in the door at all to become casuals. Keep building and building. And they just don't care. They think that this is American sports, and we can just pretend like we've been around for 50 years, and we are an established league, and this league got over 1.5 million views in 2020, 3 years ago, before a pandemic, and so we can just roll out the rock and everything will be fine. Come on, let's be real.
Oh, absolutely. It was, XFL was whatever. XFL plus the Rock equals this this exponential growth on that. I showed this year. I just like this comment. I like how all the rumor mill guys haven't had reports for a few weeks. Yeah, because they were like, even Neil in his newsletter was like, I think news is coming at some point. Like, I'm like, yeah, he probably is. Like, I'm getting off this train right now.
And he's like actually officially partnered with the league.
I know, but I think he was even.
It's just crazy.
Because it can change, and that's what kills me too. Is like we get a lot of this online of like reporting and something, and then when something else happens, like, well, that was incorrect. Like, it could have been correct along the way, and then that changed. Like, that also happens, right? It's the same thing with like players going to get signed with whoever, and then he gets signed with someone else. Like, Deshaun Watson was probably talking to, was it Atlanta or whatever, and then the Browns came in. Like, that can all be accurate with it, with the final outcome not being what was initially reported.
Although I think in this case, it's more what people believed was going to happen than ever what was actually going to happen, because I don't think anybody who was talking to these rumor mill guys actually knew what was going to happen. They just made something up off of one thing they heard once, because there's just no way you legitimately know what's going on with the regulators. Because if you are someone actually talking to the regulators, you know that if you leak out any information to the public, it's only going to make the process take longer.
Yeah, no, I know. So in terms of moving forward here, not to have this be too much, but people are viewing here, not to have this be too much of a complaint session, but moving forward, these leagues come together. Are you concerned about the dichotomy of these fan bases, or do you think that this is the little world we live in and that they'll be able to move past this and it doesn't matter?
I think there will be fights online. I think there will be fights. I mean, I don't think there'll be. I think the number of people who actually are involved in the war are not the people going to the
Yeah.
stadiums.
Yeah.
I think it'll mostly be online. There might be a tailgate parking lot fight here and there.
Yeah.
Bill style. I'm sure there'll be a few, but I don't think there'll be anything spilling over in that respect. I think there will be like a very small percentage of people who are XFL or die, even if they keep the name, or USFL or die, even if they keep that name, who are just going to be anti-merger completely and drop off. I think that number is not even more than 4 digits. So, and I think everyone else who isn't somebody who lost a team will stick around and watch, and people who wanted to go to games will go to games. And the main problem will be the casuals who don't actually have attachments to any league other than, oh, this is the league that has fans in the door and this is the one that doesn't. Outside of that, they're going to be like, I don't even know what this is. Should I watch this? I had no idea who these teams are, because now you brought in teams from another league. It's just going to be weird. They're going to be like, oh, what happened to the Houston Roughnecks because we want to have the Gamblers now, or whatever. It's going to be confusing and weird, and it's going to be hard to maintain those casuals, and that's what I'm most worried about.
To me, the dream scenario of the 8-team conference against each other is tremendously exciting, with the Birmingham Stallions. But I'm serious about all that, because I think
it's a fever dream, though, right?
Well, I know. And so, what's your realistically, how are you feeling right now about where we're going to land up?
Okay, I'm going to sort this into 2 categories. I'm going to sort this where I want to end up and where we're going to end up.
Okay.
Where I want to end up, they market, whether they have 2024 season or not, they market the merged league coming. They say, hey, this is a build up to something bigger. This is the start of something huge. This is the start of something special. And build and push and market and get attached to whoever's sticking around, and do your best to console whoever you're leaving, and try to at least make them say, hey, at least we're still going to have football on TV if you would like to enjoy that. And we will do whatever we can to see about coming back sometime in the future. We won't entirely go away. We might have some tryouts in your market so you can see some of our players or whatever. What I think is actually going to happen, regardless of when this merger gets approved, season's happening or not in 2024, what I expect is going to happen is they're going to absolutely fall flat on their face marketing these leagues. Marketing this merged league and leagues in the leagues, if they're separate for 2024, they're going to keep failing. They'll retain some level of audience, but they're not going to have any real attachment outside of who was already there. Some people will drop off because they're going to realize that it's a lame duck season. And then in 2025, they're going to be like, this feels completely foreign to me. We're going to have some level of audience in 2025. Some people will watch. It might be a little bit better than it was in 2024, just because you're merging some demographics together. If you can pull some teams together that have fans like Memphis or Birmingham or Detroit. And it's just going to be more of the same struggles, unless they've a switch flips in their brain that says, hey, we need to actually truly attach ourselves to these local fans. Otherwise, it'll be a slow burn until they run out of gas and they just give up.
It's hard. And again, I don't want to be too negative on here. We've done this a really long time. I think this is technically episode 170 today of this. So it's been going. I will say, save for the CFL here the last couple of weeks, really kind of giving life to this channel. It's hard. And we'll see. And whatever ends up going with this, but this 2.5 hour weekly Friday shows, we kind of got to wait out and see if, nothing comes next week. Like, it's hard. It's hard to maintain interest in this when, like you've said, it feels like this is a side project for a lot of the people involved. They're working on whatever. And like, I think at this point, like, we kind of got to, like I'm doing the CFL, we got to work on other stuff. I think it's hard to have, to feel ownership of this or pride in this in terms of the leagues, when it doesn't feel like even the people involved in it have a similar way in that.
Yeah. I think this is the last shot for this group of people to
Yeah.
make spring football work. And if they don't put their foot down and try to build something serious and try to market locally and try to build a serious attachment, I think we're starting over with a new ownership sometime next decade, and hopefully they figure it out.
Yeah, let's see here. I like this. Gotham has. Let's hear some predictions, and when we hear something about the merger. I've heard, I, I've heard next week. I've heard mid-December. I've heard whatever. I mean, to me, it's kind of it's a waiting game at this point. That's why I wanted to at least stop down today and do this. We talked off the top where I've tried to avoid this week to week of like, okay, what's the rumor combination this week? But it's been long enough that I think it's fun to get people on here today, and no one else has anything, doing Black Friday. But when do you think we're going to be hearing something?
I'm not a government expert, but you know what? I really don't understand how it could still be happening longer than the end of January. I mean, I'm not saying I can say for sure it will still be waiting or not, because I don't know how the government works, right? I'm not a political science expert or whatever, but I really don't understand what could possibly take them so long that it would take them past January. Like, at the end of the day, you need to come to some sort of agreement. Otherwise, this just isn't going to happen. Like, you can only stall for so long.
Well, to me, it feels like, and I've used so many like stupid metaphors today, but it's like you got two kids that don't want to clean their room, and they're like, "Well, we don't want to do like they don't." The XFL and the USFL, like they don't want to have X number of teams, right? And it's the government concerned with it, like. How hard do you dig your heels in here? How hard do you are you fighting with this? Because it's like they're fighting to shed dead weight at this point, right? They're the XFL and the USFL are not there. It'd be different if they were the ones fighting for more teams or fighting for more, but it feels like it's very much the opposite.
Yeah. So I feel like predicting how many teams. That's funny, Philip. Predicting how many teams, predicting when. I think all that it just feels pointless at this point. I feel like I just want it to be over. Whatever. I want them to make me believe again. I want to be like how I was in fall 2018, February 2019, where I was seeing Sam and them make content about the rules, and I was seeing Oliver Luck doing interviews, and I really believed in something. And I held on to that belief too long for this iteration, and now I've completely lost it. And they need to get us back, because I don't know how anybody who is contemplating this seriously and not just based on optimism can have hope right now. Like, give us a reason.
I like here. Pat has a comment. Pat will let me retire from the channel when we hit 1,000 episodes. So only 130 more episodes to go. I will tell you, it's so funny. And whatever happens this year, in terms of pushback or delay, whatever. I remember when Paul and I started, and then it was like 3 weeks after we started. They pushed it back, and then they pushed it back again. I remember sitting there thinking, like, man, it's like 70 episodes we got to get through before or whatever it was. It never was before we got to kick off, and it's nuts. I agree with you. I've never felt the same as I did that first season. And we went to DC and I wept at the kickoff, and I don't know if it was the bottomless mimosas at brunch beforehand that led to that, but I've never, sitting here watching the games, watching the Battle of Texas, all that kind of stuff, it never felt the same as it did, and not a lot that's been done by current regime has helped instill any of those feelings of joy.
Yeah, I mean, I love the players. I love the
Yes.
Coaches. Most of them. Some of them I don't like, but the coaches, I mean, not the players. There's no player I really hate. There's some coaches that I don't like. That's not my business.
All right, speaking of players I don't like, didn't Ben Holmes just get signed in Elf? Isn't he going to like Vienna or something?
Yeah, he's you gotta speak German, buddy. Gotta learn German, buddy.
Yeah, trying to get ready to learn. Yeah, the Adam Silver. Right?
Yeah,
that's funny.
In German, and also, well, they're in like a bunch of different countries, but like it's mainly Germany, right? I don't think they're really in that country as much.
I should have invested in Elf back. I should never have done any of this.
You might have better luck with the AFL at this point, although even like I don't know what broadcast deal they have, and all of their organizations seem so sketchy. I just can't even try to get attached to the new AFL right now.
Tim's invested that. Let's get here at top of the hour. We'll get out here 10 more minutes or so. Anything else? Any other talking points we want to make sure? Does anyone else have any comments? I know we had the Vipers one or the question about that. Oh yeah, Pat one. Are you okay with Drew Plitt getting an NFL contract?
He can enjoy sitting on those practice reps while he does absolutely nothing else other than show the playbook to whoever else is in the quarterback room because he can't contribute on the field. So have fun reading a playbook in Cincinnati. I'm sure the pay is quite good.
I'll tell you, the Bengals. What a season for that. Oh yeah, who can forget? I think Kevin got another DUI. I think I saw as well. I was texting Paul about that. So
In Maryland, yeah.
That was interesting. Leagues will play separate if we have to wait until late January. It's. I mean, this is sticking point at this point. I mean, what would be the XFL training camp? Would be what, January? Like
they'd have to delay the XFL season by at least 2 weeks, right? Like they'd have to start in like late February or March 1, and then, which in my opinion might be better anyway, because then you can get that one season, the first weekend where you have that huge audience, because there's always a bit more in week 1 and later on, and you get that audience, and then you come back in like week 6 after March Madness, and you have an entire half of the season left to build your audience back up towards the playoffs. Instead of what happened this time where we were like week 3, week 4, your audience gets kneecapped for like the meat of the season, and then you have to come back.
We had it here. We have a question from Gotham here. I like we're here. We'll do this first. I like how Chris. Why are they running this piece of football on YouTube right now? It's sad, but I have no interest right now. It feels in limbo. I am glad, like I said, glad that we at least beat the viewership today on this. I know that that's not a lot, a low bar, but I'm glad that Max and I are sitting here talking. It's like when we, sorry, but just proud of the CFL staff. But we can go in with a ring light and a cell phone and draw 60,000 viewers. Like maybe let's embrace some of these people that are building an audience here. I think that they, something could be said for that. I saw Bill McConnell, what's his name, the content guy, Bill, retweeting the Feast of Football and stuff. Like maybe let's get on board with some of these guys. Max and I sitting here on a Friday morning.
I mean, the reason they're doing stuff like this is because they don't have anything else they can do. I mean, they don't have anybody at that content house in Arlington, right? I mean, do they even still have the content house in Arlington, Reed? Who knows? They barely did anything with it. They shot like a couple 1-minute videos in it, and that's it. I don't know. How much money do you think it costs to rent out that house? I don't even want to know.
I don't want to know. We have a comment here. Zach, long-time listener, Zach. Haven't talked to Zach for a while with the lack of, the XFL. Hate to be negative, but at this rate, it's going to seem like they either need to cancel 2024 and come back in 2025 as the big league or go separately. This whole thing will probably die. He says, business as usual is not okay. Max, sorry, Zach, and Zach's a diehard St. Louis Battlehawks fan from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, danged if you do, danged if you don't, right? But if they completely change the way they operate and they actually try to make a real attachment during this lame duck season and at least say, hey, this lame duck is not going to nothing, it's going to something bigger, and you really make people believe that, and you make that through your commitment, not through advertising, through real on-the-ground work, people's opinions will change. The problem is that they don't want to do that. And so that's just why I don't know how you can believe in it. Right?
We had a question here, Gotham. Do you guys think it'll be a 50-50 split or not? I've heard every such combination of all the whatever. I think that concretely, I think we know that the merged league would ideally like 8, and the government does not want that. So whether it's 4 and 4 or 5 and 3, I think that is at least where I am understanding right now.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't really matter in terms of the business side which league you pull teams from, other than stadium contracts.
Yeah, stadiums and where they,
yeah. Other than that, it doesn't really matter. So I don't know, man. In my opinion, you hang on to as many stadium markets as you can, especially east of the Pacific time zone, because I think it'll just be easier to put everybody consolidate in that one region than trying to have 2 island teams out on an island, or even one out on an island way out there, even though they're not actually living there. It just feels like it would be harder for them to connect everywhere else with that one market in Seattle, which is unfortunate because they completely wasted that place. They completely did those people wrong.
Oh, Seattle was horrendous in terms of scheduling and time and
but
everything.
even bigger than that, like the league did Seattle wrong, just beyond the football itself, beyond the scheduling, beyond the league. They did the people of Seattle wrong. They completely threw that fan base away.
Expand on that.
Because, like, think about it. Like, DC and St. Louis had earlier events. Seattle came around later. First off, second off, Seattle was less connected to the league than St. Louis was or DC was because of how bad the Commanders are in DC. It's almost like they didn't really have an NFL team for a while. But whereas in Seattle, you have all these different professional sports, and a lot of them are pretty good, and the Kraken are exciting. And so they just let that fan base drift away by not committing to them, whereas they committed a little earlier to those other places. And it's just a shame. But it's not the people on the ground fault. It's the league execs, right?
Well, I think they thought it was a really weird spot in 2020 where the Mariners were still kind of on a rebuild. Like you said, the Kraken weren't there. I think it was really ripe. And then they thought back, and Mariners are hot. And I know it's different, time of year for that. But, in terms of what I'm spending time and money on, and then the Kraken, I mean, when you're going literally at the same time back to back with the Kraken that are playing sold out a mile down the road, it's really hard.
And now you have Geno Smith. He's good, kind of now. And you have the soccer's hot. Both leagues, both teams for soccer are really hot in Seattle. So you just have a lot going for you in Seattle. And then you have this team that went away for 3 years, and people just kind of don't care as much anymore because you didn't make that commitment to show why they should care. So it's just a shame.
Zach has a question here. This is where you're trying to explain why would the government have any say? Because the government needs to process. They need to regulate all this. So they need the XFL and the USFL can't come in and say, we want to cut half of our players, coaching staff, all those other things. They need to be, the government is stepping in and saying, like, well, we don't want to approve this by downsizing too much.
It's something to do with the size of the company. Yeah. And also think about it. There aren't that many professional football leagues in the United States. There's the USFL and XFL, and then there's the semi-pro indoor leagues and whatever other semi-pro outdoor leagues you have. None of them which are very serious, really, for being honest, in terms of actual financial pay. So they're like a leader in their industry almost.
Yeah.
So when you're merging to people who take up a large market share of that very small industry, which really is just the NFL and other, that's a significant tidal shift in the economy of that industry. And so that's why the government is getting involved.
And and they said with just the number of players and everything, that it's a shame to me. And I there's no better way to handle it, but I couldn't think of many worse ways that this all could have panned out right now, if that makes sense.
I mean, it would be worse if the only way it could be worse is if they just decided to kill one league, and then they just what would happen instead is that they just killed the XFL or they killed the USFL, and Fox just bought into the other league, and then they just continued on with 8 teams. Theoretically, they could do that without merging. So
imagine if the CFL talks hadn't happened and Fox wouldn't have been incentivized to go to the USFL a year early and then they do the hub thing and then the XFL found out. I mean, just imagine like sliding doors here where we could have been at this point.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many what ifs. What if the league execs actually cared? Right. I am taking those shots because those shots are deserved.
And Max was the diehard of the diehard. I mean, it was interesting today because we haven't talked a lot lately just because of all the CFL stuff. And it's fine being negative. I mean, I think that everyone has a right to express it.
They earned it. Why should I not be negative? Why should I not be after everything that's happened? Why should I believe in you? I believe in the people on the floor. I believe in the social media people. I believe in the people who are getting paid part-time, having to work overtime, getting paid part-time money. I believe in the coaches mostly. I believe in the players entirely. I believe in the stadium staff. I believe in honestly, I believe in Bill McCulloch and those kinds of people because they know what they're doing. They're just not being allowed to reach their potential by the broader structure of the league. I don't believe in Russ Brandon. I don't believe in Jerry Carnell. I don't believe in The Rock. I don't believe in Danny Garcia right now. I definitely don't believe in the USFL side of things. I don't believe in Eric Shanks. I don't believe in Daryl Johnston. I don't believe in this entire people who govern the structure. I don't believe in those people. And why should I? After everything that's happened, why should anyone believe in those people right now?
It's hard. It's a big ask, and that's what we said. And again, the people I know say I think it was when Anthony Miller was on, and people were saying like, "Oh, we're so negative and everything." But it's there was a lot of big words used, and a lot of grandiose, and a lot of promises, and it's hard. And I understand that this isn't where anyone wanted to be, but it's the very nature of kind of what you've led people through here the last 2-3 years. And I thought it was a big ask going in when the XFL kicked off and after all the delays and everything and the CFL talks and pushing back. Like I thought that was a big enough already. And now here we are. Okay, this uncertainty of the last 3 months, I think it's just almost been a nail in the coffin on a lot of this.
Just prove us wrong.
Yeah.
Please prove me wrong. Prove all the doubters wrong. I want you to prove me wrong. You have all the tools it takes to make this work. You are titans of your industries, and you're just kind of going along like this doesn't matter to you, and you're just wasting this money. And all the while, these players and fans are caught in the middle of it, and they just if they really committed to this, I'm not even talking about putting in a tons of money. I'm talking about just putting in the effort, because it doesn't actually cost. It really, I mean, how much money does it really cost to do these tiny little events in these markets and get some freelancers out? I mean, how much money does that really cost?
Well, right. I had said from the beginning that if you found a street team in each market, have people apply, give them free season tickets and give them merch and say, you got to do once a month in a fan event and find a bar and host. Like, I don't even think it's a paying thing. I think you could find people that would be happy to do it to help grow. I mean, we have people, doing shows and everything already. Like, I don't think it's that big of an ask to get the people involved.
And yet they just don't care. I really don't see why I should believe they care. I just don't. They don't care. They want to make their own little fantasy world where they barely do anything and it all just works out and they can go work on their other stuff.
Philip has the last question. We'll put this to bed here. Can spring football ever exist and be successful?
Yes. Yeah. Undisputedly, yes. There is no way you can watch what happened in 2020 with all the investment that was put in and how immediately that paid off despite plenty of hiccups and not think that spring football can't work. The problem is that people don't see the long-term vision, number one. Number two, something really unfortunate happened with that league that no one could have predicted unless you were an expert in foreign diseases in like December 2019. And even then, most sports leagues, like the only sports league who was prepared for the pandemic was like the Wimbledon tennis championships because they had pandemic insurance. That was it. So like, if not for that, maybe we would still have the XFL right now and it would be flourishing and flying. And that's not me saying, oh, 2020 is the best thing ever. They had plenty of mistakes, but they actually committed. No one else since then has committed. All it takes is commitment, patience, and listening and understanding and continuing to try to grow and willing to lose money for like 5 years. And you will have a league that works. It won't be MLS yet. It definitely won't be a major sports league, but you will have a committed customer fan base. People will care and it will matter. And players will come between that league and the NFL. And people will watch it because it's interesting to watch during the spring when there's no college football on, there's no NFL on, and the only other option is baseball, hockey, MLS, and basketball. But
I agree.
No commitment, no reward. You only get out what you put in, and they have not put in the work.
In the infamous words of the New Radicals, you only get what you give. So never forget that. Max, this was good today. A little, no, we got a little negative, but that's okay. I think appreciate it. And Max,
It's
like I
earned
said, coming
negativity,
on.
Reed. It's earned. It's earned
Well,
negativity.
and again, this was enough today. We haven't done this every week. I think this had been week 4 of coming on and bitching and complaining about this, but it was a good spot today doing our Friday show, coming off the CFL and all of that. So I appreciate Max coming on. Like I said, kind of stand by. We'll figure out episodes here, CFL season done. Depending on news next week, but keep keep an eye out for that. But we'll figure it out. But obviously we're done with our Monday recaps now, done with all of that stuff. So stay tuned. I assume everyone's subscribed at this point, but give a thumbs up to the video here. I think we're still up over the XFL fan fest here, whatever at this point. But appreciate Max stepping up today. Like I said, we needed the guys to kind of go through all this. I hope everyone else is good with their families and stuff. Anything else, Max, before we get out of here?
I'm gonna, how Andy's the professor. Can I be the substitute teacher?
You want to be the substitute? You're producer Max. You don't like producer?
I'm producer. Well, when I'm off the show, I'm producer Max. When I'm on the show, I'm the substitute teacher. So I'm both. I am producer. I have alter egos.
That's good.
Yeah. And then secondarily, some part in the back of my head just wants to have hope again. I really, there's a part in the back of my head that is an optimism that's like, hey, believe, make all of us have that belief again, please. It's like a cry for help. We need to find a way to get the fans to cry for help. We need to make them believe in us. I don't know how you make that happen. We just got to activate the fans. Also, really proud of how well the Grey Cup coverage went, your CFL coverage, and how well your channel has grown. You're of the people who are actually podcasts and not larger brands beyond just being a podcast. You're the number one alternative football podcast now on YouTube, which I think is impressive. And every single metric, subscribers, all that, it's impressive. I'm happy for you.
Well, I appreciate that. Like I said, we've wavered and I'm here, right? This has been long and doing that. We've done weekly recaps since February and year-round football. It's been a lot. The XFL stuff, and I appreciate Andy and everyone coming on that, and then Pat carrying through the USFL, and then Evan being involved in a lot of that, and then him and Jason with the CFL. I going up to Grey Cup was great, connecting, meeting all those people. I'm here, a part of this world, kind of whatever happens, right? But I feel like I'm a hired gun at this point, and I think I just wish that, like you said, get us excited in this, get whatever. I think we have a very passionate audience about all this. I appreciate everyone taking the time today on Black Friday to spend time and sharing their comments and concerns as well. So I think there's a place. We'll see what that looks like, but same with the CFL. Let's embrace, cell phone and a ring light and outdrew every other piece of coverage that they put out over the weekend. So I appreciate Max, appreciate the listeners, appreciate the viewers today. We'll post this on the podcast channel as well. So if you want to listen to it later, thanks as always. Please subscribe, like, and all that stuff. Go enjoy the Jets now, the zombie Jets.
Roll wave. Go Tulane against UTSA. That's my game.
All right. Enjoy all that. Go Kraken, everything else. All right.